I get asked from time to time, Ken, when do you go live these days? What's your schedule like now? Because for the longest time, I had that Sunday morning in the Pacific time slot around 10 a.m. I'd go live. And then eventually one day I just didn't do it. Just focus on other things. And I started getting that question. And then I didn't go live for the longest time. And people were like, well, you kind of teased us because you had this schedule, you got on a regular schedule, and all of a sudden you pulled the rug out from under us on Sunday mornings. So what do? I go live twice in the same week. Um, with last night's Joefest reunion with a bunch of friends. And because I can't get enough of my friends, we're going to do another reunion of sorts tonight with a friend I've come to know over the last little while. We've talked over the last couple of Joefests. He's basically become a convention regular, and I thought, you know what, this guy's got the gift of gab. He can talk on the channel. He's worth bringing on. He knows a lot about, well, I'll let him introduce himself. But from the Order of Battle podcast, we have my good friend Jason Murrell. How you doing, man?
I think I've been oversold. I
Do you want to
doing
go back?
well.
Do you want to go backstage and I can start that over again?
Yeah, let's Jason
Okay.
doesn't know anything. He's all right.
All right. So in three, two, one. Okay. So this jerk ball doesn't know anything about anything. I don't even know why I invited him on, but he's here right now. So let's make use of this hour. Jason Murrell, everybody.
Perfect. Much better.
I've never
Oh
actually done
man.
that before, where I've taken somebody off the camera and then because Darren Howlett felt I oversold him when I came on there too, so I quickly brought you on when I started hearing Darren Howlett's voice in my head going, "You're
Yeah.
overselling me, Ken," and then you're like, "No, you still overshot the mark, Ken."
Well, and it's Darren. You can't oversell Darren. He's done everything.
Yes, he has actually, because the
Yeah.
story I always love telling, and I think I told it to you too, is because he's been going to the conventions for literally decades. He would mention all these names to me, right? And Darren's a few years older than me, right? So it's like listening to like an older relative tell stories and tell names, and then all of a sudden you get to one of the conventions in 2023, and he's like, "And this is my friend here, this is my friend here." I'm like, "Oh, I already know about you, you know." You have all the prototypes, and you have a toy line coming out, and you have the rare exclusive this, that, and the other thing, and it's like I kind of like knew everybody already, right? Like, hey, you get this with Alexander. Darren gets that with me.
Yeah. Well, at this point, people only like me because they know Alexander. I'm on his dime at this point. But Darren and I do the same thing. I want to introduce my friends to all my friends, and the more my people know each other, the better and easier it is for me.
You know what I really liked is that, I mean, there's that clip during my Joe Fest walkthrough where I'm sitting down. It's 3:30 a.m. and you're like, no, you're gonna sit here for another hour. And even for people who don't know, Alexander is Jason's son. He has a quick cameo in the video. He's also telling me it's too early to go to bed. What people don't know is like before, like what, a year or 2 years ago, I didn't know any of you guys, right?
Yeah.
I met you last year, and then I just kind of plunked down on that couch and just started talking to you, Corey, Alexander, and Rage and Spoon, like we've known each other for 20 years. That's just
Well,
what it's like going to these shows, and that's why I like this topic tonight.
well, to be fair, I've known your name longer than I've known you. We have a lot of mutual friends. You've been around longer than you've been going to shows. And so I've known who Ken is for a while. I just didn't know Ken. So Ken was a mutual, then became an
Yes.
acquaintance, and now I would dare say friend.
So when I
Um,
added you to Facebook, because I asked you to, I think last year's show, I'm like, spell your last name so I can connect with you on Facebook. And when you did, I'm like, well, you're in this Facebook group and this Facebook group, right? And it said something like 87,000 mutual friends. I'm just like, well, okay, I guess this is a match made in either hell or heaven, depending on which
right.
who you're rooting for that day. Yeah, but the chat's actually kind of busy, busier than usual, and it's not because of me. It's because of my esteemed guest of the hour here. So let's see who's in the chat, because some of them are your friends. We got Joe Ricondo, got podcast from the pit, who you've been on with them in the past. Yeah,
Yeah.
talking Joe, and I messaged Tim to basically thank him for being in the chat, but I think this is actually Mark, so Tim's gonna have no idea
Ooh,
why I'm thanking him.
it's gonna be a late night for Mark.
If he's
1
saying
a.m.
it's,
for him.
I was like, oh, that's right, he's overseas. Whoops. We got Smog17 who introduced himself at the show. We got Wreckship85 who I hung out with a little bit at the show. We got Rolando Utah Toy Hunter We got Glow, man. First time I've seen this name in the chat because he's here
That's a
following
friend.
you. That's a friend of yours. Yes. Joe Hunter, because he tuned in last night. He's tuning in again here. Here's another friend of yours, I believe, Saturday Morning Toy Collector.
Yeah. If he
Right?
had stayed at the show longer, you would have met him, but he was in and out. He had to make the drive home.
Well, 2026. Let's shake hands
That's
there,
right.
Saturday Morning Toy Collector. All right, we got Ronnie Trickshot, also from overseas,
There
but
it
it's
is.
morning for him, which is cool. We got people saying hi to each other. Oh, Wilhelm Toy and Hobby, another member of the booth crew for Delta
Yeah.
17. We got Nolan here. Good to see you. We got Michael Jean Fleming and Victor Matthews, and from Ireland we've got Ray Murphy, who I bought
Hey,
the rooster, the 6-inch rooster figure from.
what
Right?
an incredible painter.
Oh yeah, oh yeah, absolutely. And we've got the Rodimus Power Toy Collector. Yeah. All right, so everyone's here to see Jason. So, all right, Jason, tell us your life.
Well done. My life story. So it started in 75. No.
4 score and 7 years ago. Yeah.
I used to present a lot for work, and I was told when you present, you always start with like the unique thing about you so you get the audience on your side. So I used to start with I'm the Jason from two Washingtons because I've lived on both sides of the country.
Washington D.C. and Washington State.
That's right.
Yeah. Too bad I didn't know you when you lived in Washington State because that wouldn't have been a terrible drive, you know. So.
But it would have been our parents driving.
Oh, okay, that's different. That's
Sure.
different. That's kind of a long
I,
way to go to say I'm gonna have a friend come
well,
over. So
yeah, I grew up in Seattle. And until 2017 was the last time I was there, but up until 2017, I was there once every 1 to 3 years.
mm.
And I like to fly into your hometown and then drive down to mine. So had we known each other just a few years back, this would have been perfect.
But I'll live near enough to the airport if you want to fly in and step out of the gate and just have a quick beer at the bar. And
There you go.
I'm buying because it's Canadian currency, so I'd be technically hosting, right?
It,
you
it
know.
wouldn't be the first time that Canadian uh, customs were like, why are you here? For a nerd friend? Are you for real?
And they'd be like, "Well, we're not technically supposed to judge, even though we're totally giving you those eyes right now."
Oh, 100%. I've been so judged by airport customs.
Okay. I'd rather anyway, whatever. That's their job. So we judge them as we walk by and we kind of mumble under our
Absolutely.
breath. So yeah, yeah. Um, this is a true story. I feel like Crash is pulling my leg again.
That is a true story. Crash is one of those guys, and I just talked about him on the Order of Bottle podcast with Stephen Kelly. We went to Crash's car and we looked in his trunk, and Crash is one of those guys that I recognize, and like I know, but we're acquaintances. We're not like, we haven't hung out, we haven't become friends, but like I totally know who you are the minute I see you. So it was nice to actually spend time and get to know him a bit better.
Yeah, no, Crash is again one of my best buds out there. Now jumping in, you mentioned you're born in '75, so you probably would have just missed the Adventure Team and would have been
Oh yeah.
peak age when real America. You got a Bullet Man back there, so which
That's
is
an adult find. That's not a childhood thing. Yeah. Um, my
hey
my
hey
dad
hey
had
Beetlejuice. You said his name, and
look at that. Yeah. We only said his name once. We got to say it two more times before he shows up,
I may
or
have
four more
mumbled
times
it.
before he shows up and kills us.
I may have
Bloody
mumbled it,
Mary.
but not enough times for him to kill us. But anyway, sorry. You were saying something
Yeah.
before I interrupted.
Yeah. No one in my family had 12-inch Joes. They were poor.
Hmm.
So 82 was my first introduction to GI Joe.
Hmm.
That was an adult find. Once all the 12-inch collectors saw a 6-year-old Alexander running around and decided to corrupt him with 12-inch. And now I've fallen in love with 12-inch as well. And we have well over 100 figures in the house.
Whew. That's awesome. Like Crash gifted me an Action Man with Eagle Eye, and it
Oh,
was the first time I've gotten like
wow.
a like a vintage Action Man. I have a couple of the 40th anniversary Action Mans, and I have a few of the 60s and 70s Joes. But he's usually with me when I'm hunting for them because I got my Talking Adventure Team commander last year because he helped me talk down the price. I think the guy wanted 150 and Crash is like, I'll give you 125. And the guy said, sure. He's like, can't pay up. That's going home with you. I'm like, all right, cool.
I
Yeah,
think if I remember Bob Reekin's conversation correctly, um, the Eagle Eye was a U.S. invention, but the flocked hair and the Kung Fu grip were the Action Man uh, additions to the 12-inch.
that's correct. Bob sculpted a two-thirds size model out of his own left hand to make the Kung Fu grip, which he
And
called the
someone on
gripping
his
hand.
right, and someone on his team made the flocked hair.
Yes.
But and I
Was
can't
that
remember
Bill
if it was
Pugh? No.
American. Yeah, I can't
Yeah.
remember if it was Hasbro or Palitoy that did the muscle body, but I think the Eagle Eye was American.
I think the Eagle Eye was American, and I think it's a bit different because the U.S. did the muscle body, and then Action Man had something called the dynamic body, and it's a little
Yeah.
bit different. I'd have to either one ask Crash, two flag down Bob Breakin, or three grab my Bob Breakin's My
Well,
Palatoy story over there,
which
made
is a
by
great book.
Total Toy Books, right?
Brian
So
and Patty are and under Total Toy Books have put out an amazing set of books. My Palatoy story with Bob and Brian is part of that, and it's amazing. But if we have Stephen and Mark on, maybe they can speak to that. But
maybe they can. And I've already very passively put pressure on Brian and Patty to make a book called Total O-Ring and go over all the indie O-Ring toy lines. You know, not being passive aggressive or anything like that about
sure. Well,
what we're
listen,
trying to
I mean,
sell, and you know,
they got their start doing they got their start doing the boss fight book, right?
yes, they did actually
So
before Total Toy Books was actually founded. So actually,
so
that
so
makes sense.
indie O-ring is right up their alley.
Yes.
We have
So
precedent.
there you go. There you go. We're gonna combine all the best together, and of course, they've got Total Star Wars going on right now, and Total Action Force Volume 3 going on. So let's just add to their plate, just for giggles, right? Just for
Yes,
laughs.
as if they didn't have enough to do.
Yeah. So I mean, I know that you said that you've got some experience with conventions. You used to do a lot of the comic ones back in the day, and you said that you managed to go to the last JoeCon, so you managed to experience some history there before it ended and we kind of got into the modern times, you know.
Yeah,
Um,
I missed.
and yeah,
So I didn't know there were Joe Cons for a number of years. Like yourself, I was by myself collecting. I had the 63rd tattooed on my arm for 4 years before anybody knew what it was. Right.
hmm,
Um, and, Saturday morning toy collector, he and I met at Heroes Con, which I went to for years. I've been all over the country with either toy conventions or gaming conventions and even toy conventions, but not a GI Joe one, until I joined the Joe community, sort of by accident. I had indie comic book friends bugging me to go onto Facebook to join a bunch of independent comic book groups. And one day, a GI Joe group was recommended to me by Facebook, and right at the perfect time that Facebook was starting the live videos. So like Joe Baylitz and Justice Curry and all of those guys were just starting that Facebook Live. So I jumped in doing Facebook Live and joined the group, and next thing I know, I've cut out all of my non-Joe specific shows. I'm having to rebuild that now.
hey, that's all right, because what happened was you probably got yourself ingrained in a community because you were one of the first people to really sell me on. We're going to talk about it a bit later. Assembly required, right? You've been a regular at the Joe shows, and see if this jogs up some memories for you. I yanked a couple of screenshots from Hooded Cobra Commander 788's walkthrough of the last JoeCon.
Yep.
This room jogged some memories for you.
Oh yeah. I mean, that was a great that was a great room. It was very small compared to what we're accustomed to with Joe Fest, but at the time, and it was tiny compared to what I was used to with comic book conventions. But at the time, I had never seen so much GI Joe in one place, and I made the last BotCon, which was Hasbro sponsored, when Alexander in 2016. So Alexander's like almost 5. And then I took him to this. If you go through some of those photos, you might find a uh, a 6-year-old Alexander running around at this show, touching everything, talking to people, and being excited. This was a great show. I remember giving my badge to somebody who was a Motu guy, and he went in and bought all the Motu on the floor. Came back out, gave me my badge. I went back in, and I spent way too much. And that was the show where I think we saw sunlight that night, that Saturday night. We were in the front lobby of that hotel. You mentioned, you didn't mention, you're friends with like Kenny from Roma and Toy Department, right?
Yep. Yep.
So I already knew Aaron Dietrich from Roma at that point, but I didn't know cousin Kenny. And JoeCon 2018, at somewhere between 2 and 6 in the morning, I was shit hammered, the kids in bed, and I run to the restroom. And as I walk out of the restroom, there's cousin Kenny pointing at me and laughing and gripping my shoulders, laughing at me in my face, full on with his full chest. And I'm like, I don't know you. Why are you laughing at me? He goes, how drunk are you? And I was like, I'm not that bad. And he goes, uh-huh. Turns me around, and I just walked out of the women's restroom.
Oh my God.
And so, I mean, it's JoeCon. There were very few women at all, you could see from the photo, and then fewer that were up at 4 or 5 in the morning. There were some. But we've been
yeah.
friends since. Like, that was how I became
So
friends
you
with
met him
Kenny.
coming out of the women's restroom. It's funny because at Joefest 24, I have a similar story.
Okay.
I'm pretty drunk. It was when we were sitting there when Sergeant Slaughter came to sit next to us, right?
Yes.
I
That
go
was
to use
right before or after the puppet guy tried
yes.
to rile him up.
Yes, I remember that. So I'm walking to the restroom, and the restrooms are like right next to each other in
Yes.
that lobby. You know exactly what I'm talking about. So I'm
It was
about to
easy to
go
go
in.
left.
Exactly. I'm about to go into the women's room. I see the sign at the last second. I do literally like a 180-degree about face, and I walk into the men's room. I come out, and I'm like, nobody saw me. It's all good. And my buddy Ed from Action Figs is sitting there snickering as I come back. I'm like, what? He's like, I thought I had to go rescue you, Ken, but you didn't quite go in. And since then, the story has always been that Ken went into that. I didn't go in, but the story got out that I apparently went in, right?
It's a better
And
story if you did go in.
that was also the night that I met Joe Baylitz. I didn't talk to him this past show, but he went in with a shot to the bathroom. And as I'm on the way out, I just go, "Hey man," and he goes, "Hey, you want a free shot?" I'm just like, "What? What?" It's some Jello thing, and I just slammed it back, and that was my introduction to Joe Baylitz. And then when I left the bathroom, he's like, "I'm Joe Baylitz. Oh, I'm Ken, by the way." It's like, "Oh, okay, so we're just giving each other shots in the bathroom now." It's Joe Fest. That's what
Perfect.
happens. You can ask Kenny. I nearly passed out on the floor, and he and Troy nearly had to peel me up um, when Kenny and Chris from Toy Department were handing out shots on the Friday night. But I made it to my booth not hungover. These are the kinds of stories that you get,
You
you know.
cannot trust anyone from the toy department or Roma when it comes to shots in a lobby hang. It's
I,
dangerous.
yeah.
It's not in your best interest. And please do it. It's going to be fun.
Yeah. When Chris gave me that shot, and you got to bear in mind, I hadn't talked to Chris in a year. The last time was him swiping his credit card in 2024 to buy a bunch of Delta 17s. I hadn't talked to him at all. Next thing I know, the very next time I see him, he's got one of those mystery bags, like one of those like mystery garbage bag. You know the one. You know the toy
It's the
department
99
special.
shots.
The
Yeah.
99. Is that what they call it? Because there's 99 shots in
So
there?
there was a shot called 99 Bananas. It's awful. It's horrendous. It is disgusting. No one likes it. And then they came out with a bunch of other flavors. So 99 watermelon, 99 pineapple, 99, etc. And so they buy a bunch of those. They throw it in a bag. And this is why I said, if you see anyone from Toy Department, it is not in your best interest to take a shot from them. But please do. It's going to be fun. It's going to be awful, but it's going to be fun.
So yeah, when I took that shot back, it was orange, and yes, you're right. Kenny did call it 99 shot. My whole head felt like it was on fire. Like I kid you not, my eyes, my ears, my mouth, my nose was absolutely burning, and I swear I'm about to black out and I fall on my back. I'm not gonna say what profanity I screamed when I pointed at the ceiling and started screaming profanity, but Kenny or Troy can tell you that story because I told
Sure.
that story plenty at Joefest. Um,
You saw all the gods. I get it.
yeah, and I may have cursed something from my childhood that was basically me venting about something I didn't like eating in the past, and I guess that shot was so bad it must have reminded me of it. But yeah. So okay, so you've had a toy department 99 shot special just like that was my
Anytime.
first time 2.5 weeks ago. By the way, I haven't drank since the Joe Fest, probably because the 99 shot is still haunting me. So wow. Um,
Joe shows are not all drinking, but the lobby hang is all about tying one on. And oh, actually, it's not even really about tying one on because you have people like Bill Leach and others and Robert Rust who are sober and they're riding the
oh,
same mix with the same people that are stumbling and slurring. But the lobby hang is what turns a toy show into a community show.
let me just see if the next slide is okay. No, I'll come back to this one.
Yeah,
Speaking of lobby hangs, because we just
that's
talked
this
about the Joe
year's.
Fest one, that's this year's. You can tell the difference already from it being
Oh
this
yeah,
year versus other
I
years.
can tell the difference based on the Raise the Flag and the Super 7.
Mm.
So Todd and I are right on the other side of the Super 7.
Yep.
Um, but yes, so sadly, I could see that I could tell you where we're at just by a quick picture.
I can tell where we are too because we're off frame on this one. I don't know why I took it like this without Delta 17 being in
Well,
frame
because
there.
you guys are facing that front wall, so no matter
Yes.
what we do, you're off frame unless
Yes,
you take it
that's
from the
true.
front door.
That's true, there's no balcony up top for me to take it from the front door, right?
Right.
So, yeah. So, okay, while we're on this photo, was it a relatively easy migration? Because I imagine you watched everybody say goodbye to each other with tears in their eyes at the JoeCon 2018. I think Joe Fest had just started that year, like a few months before the last JoeCon. I think because
That's right.
I think Ed said they started it in March. Was it an
That's right.
easy migration to Joe Fest in 2019, or was there a bit of a transition period over a couple of years?
No. So the first Joe Fest was in March of 2018. It was a smaller show that had a lot of public or had a lot of local um, movement behind it. And he was talking about how it was so much bigger than he expected because of the local news and everybody else. And I was at Heroes Con that year, and I was talking to Chad Bauer, who is a writer, and he was telling me about Joe Fest. And I was like, well, I
Hmm.
don't know anything about that. But next week, I'm going to be, it was back to back weekends. So next weekend, I'm going to be at JoeCon in Chattanooga, Tennessee. And he was like, well, I don't know anything about JoeCon. I'm like, how do you know about this first year Joe Fest in Augusta, but you haven't heard of JoeCon, which has been going on since the 90s? And we're just kind of joking back and forth. And I'm not friends with Chad Bauer. We were friendly acquaintances from the comic book scene, um, and so it was on my mind. And so at JoeCon, you know, JoeCon 2016 was supposed to be the last JoeCon. It was the last BotCon.
Mhm.
but they announced that they would have 2 more years of JoeCon. 2018 would be the last one. Ed, very, you know, very smartly, very strategically, or very lucky, all three. He at JoeCon 2018, he announced that Joefest 2019 would be the exact same dates as the last JoeCon, and he
Wow.
announced it at JoeCon. And so it gave everybody who was doing the tearful goodbyes a hopeful moment.
So was JoeCon always in June?
No, it wasn't always in June.
Yeah.
And it traveled around the country, but it was always in that like April to June range.
Okay.
And it very often fell on dates that I was at a toy show or
Mm,
at a comic book show.
mm.
So I had missed several, but even then, I had only known about it for about 5 years because I had been by myself.
Mm.
And I didn't join the wider Joe community until probably 2016 when I was collecting Transformers for my son and GI Joe for me, um, because of my previous failure to be a Joe collector because I was poor. And I was definitely one of the poors when I was trying to collect Joes in my 20s and 30s.
Hmm.
Um, so as someone who is already a convention goer and a regular scheduler of conventions, it was pretty easy for me to go, all right, well, if Joe Fest is Augusta, that's 6.5 hours. It's the same weekend as this. I can calendar it right now.
Mm. Okay.
Easy,
That's fair.
and
Yeah.
another Joe guy, Chad Bauer, had recommended it.
Oh.
So there was like different layers of me being like, yeah, of course I'm going to be there. And then all of the old heads that I was making friends with or knew were definitely going to be there too. So it was a pretty easy transition from my perspective. You know, JoeCon moved all over the damn country, so I can assume from people that went for 10 years that it was easy, but I don't know. I mean,
Mm.
Augusta's not the biggest airport. It's not the easiest to get to. However, you can get to it within 3 hours from either Atlanta or Charlotte, which are both great airports.
Right.
So
Yeah. See,
the
yeah,
first Joe Fest was great.
the reason I ask about was it always in June is because it's funny you mentioned BotCon and how you and I have not talked Transformers yet. The first international show for me, international show being a US show because I'm from Canada, the first one I went to was BotCon 2010 and it
Okay.
was in late June that year and it was in Orlando.
Yeah.
And I
The
went there to go to Universal Studios. So that's why I was asking, like, were JoeCon and BotCon actually in the same month? Because that wouldn't make sense because
They
Hasbro
were not.
supported both shows. So that must have been a year because that would have been 2010. That must have been a year when JoeCon was in a different month. So, okay.
The the final BotCon was in April. And so for my birthday weekend, we took Alexander to BotCon because it was in Louisville, Kentucky. It was a 3 hour drive.
Hmm.
So we drove up for the day. We took him to BotCon. He walked around and talked to artists and had a good time while I shopped. His mom, who had never been to any type of convention before, nerd wise, let alone a toy show, um, was very overwhelmed at the commerce of it all. And I remember, and it makes me sick. At BotCon 2016, there was a guy who had a boxed flag
Huh.
and he was using the flag microphone um, to like get people's attention, and he was yelling and he was trying to sell it, and the price was incredible. Um, but it was a day trip and I didn't have the room in the car to take it back 3 hours and everything else, and so I did not buy it. And I paid more for my loose flag than I would have paid for that boxed one just a year later.
We all have, I mean, we all have one that got away and then we end up buying it for more later. For me, I saw a Rolling Thunder at a
Oh,
2017 show complete. Now for about 160 Canadian, which is like 120 US, which is a great price today. Back then, it felt a little high. I told the vendor, don't have room in my car. I'm already packed to the tits here. I wish I could have bought that. He goes, cool. Give me 80 Canadian, which is like less than 60 US. Complete for Rolling Thunder. I said, sorry, man.
great price.
I can't. I don't have a box to put. Like, I would have loved to have a box to put, like the Rolling Thunder box, and put it above my bookcases to display it like that to keep it more space savvy. As soon as I get back, sure enough, I tell the story to somebody who's working at Toy Traders. And what did he say? I got a box in the back here. I could have just sold you, Ken. You should have just bought that. Damn it! Ah, yeah.
Ouch.
I know. I
Toy
know.
Traders is a hell of a store. I've been there 3 or 4 times, but it's been 2017 was the last time I was there. So
Yeah. Well, wish you could come back here, but yeah,
Retro Tinker is correct. Um,
yeah. This comment here for Joe Ricondo, he says that he and I talk about this a lot. It's always hard to say goodbye. It's almost like we're missing something when we're about to leave to go home. See, your goodbye is a little less tearful, and I know you said this won't happen this year, but most years you're able to say, I'll see you in half a year at assembly required in Iowa.
Assembly required in Iowa is phenomenal. Um, that's the 2025 show or 2024 show. So that was just 6 months ago or 9 months ago, um, with their Iron Grenadier set. So you can't see it because of the line, but Larry Hama is over to the right of that photo. Josh Blaylock is over to the left. Um, that's a great show, and you can see it's not as large of a space or a large of a floor as Joe Fest, but it's growing, and the convention center he has it in has a similar type floor as Joe Fest if he got it to that size.
So
Um,
yeah, I was listening to your Order of Battle episode the other day where you had Brian Sauer on, and one thing he said he has to try to balance is he wants to grow the show because it'll attract other vendors, it'll attract more people, it'll create kind of a bigger experience. However, he's he has to balance it with losing the intimacy, certain contests, the dinner that everybody can go to right now, right? But it's this weird thing where the size of it would make you think it's a local slash semi-regional show. But people drive in from 7, 8 hours away. They fly from across the country to be there because
but
it's almost like it's their Joe Fest Part 2 with a bit
that's right.
more intimate hangout and less selection. So you're trading some selection for more intimate hangout,
Yeah.
potentially business connections if you work for a toy company, 5x5 Toys, Delta 17, you know, right?
It's an interesting show. So for a couple years, I had Aaron Dietrich from Roma Collectibles, Dan Music, and Bill Leach. All three of them saying, "You got to come to Assembly Required. You got to come to Assembly Required." Assembly Required is the show of the year, and I'm like, well, how does this compare to CoilCon or Joe Fest or Kentuckiana or DFW, and they're like, it doesn't, because these are all different types of shows. This show has the intimacy and we all hang out, and it's probably 200 people that show up. And I was like, it's the show of the year, but it's only 200 people. And they were like, yeah, you show up, you'll never not come. I said, okay. So the next year I show up, and it is so tiny. There's like 10 vendors in a WeWork space, but it was so impactful. I've never not missed. And now you can see from this picture, it's not 200 people anymore. It's much bigger than that. And it is growing, and it's growing year after year.
Yep.
And
And what year was
Brian and
that?
I were,
What year
this
was?
was, oh,
This
when
was
I was,
this was last year, but the one you're talking about, 200 people. What year was that?
I don't know, 5 or 6 years ago.
Okay. Yeah.
I don't remember how many times I've been, but it's a Saturday only show. and I was showing up on Thursday.
Because there's a Friday preview. I think they added that
No,
later.
not then. They added the Friday preview, and then I
Ah.
start showing up on Wednesday. So it is a show that, like, Adam Skamosky and I are rooming at together. We're both showing up on Wednesday.
Yeah.
Everyone that, like, this D-Class and Skeletron have been early advocates of this show, and early as in like 13 years ago when he first started and it was like less than 100 people.
Yep.
And they've fallen in love with what Brian and his team, Travis and the rest, do. They've fallen in love with the intimacy, and yeah, to his point, that Friday dinner was everybody, and then it was most people, and as he continues to grow, that's going to be limited. But you know, the things that, the way he papers the show, the way he designs the show, the themes, the games for children. You know, when there were only 200 people at this show, he still had Scrabbles and word finds and games for kids. And pre-COVID, Joe Customs was there doing customizing classes for children.
Wow.
Know?
So
and so it is so he has a group called the Dealt Hand that you can't see it in this picture, but the Dealt Hand is not a toy group. They're not a G.I. Joe group. They're a local board game group. So they sit down, they set up 3 or 4 tables at his show. And as you're walking around, you've done your shopping, you've done your visiting, but you say, I want to try the G.I. Joe Mission Critical game, or the G.I. Joe deck building game, or the G.I. Joe Risk game, or whatever. They have it there, and they'll teach you how to play it, and you could sit and play. Tim Finn of Talking Joes and Hub Comics and A Real American Joe book, he has, that's where most of his game time is at. I have a buddy who has local family, so he'll fly in and ride home with me. He comes to this show, and he's not a Joe guy, but he'll sit and play this game. They have things to do that are not just shopping. And the panels are great. The guests, I mean, we think about how big Hasbro's going with the San Diego Comic-Con box set, and Brian made connections with Michael Hill and brought him to this show before anybody in G.I. Joe realized that he was the Cold Slither writer. You know,
I always say it to Joe Ricondo, Michael Charles Hill is a bit of a hidden gem. Even just the way he wrote the Transformers episodes, the Return of Optimus Prime, where he did the teleplay for one of the parts, how he wrapped up that story, because someone would give him an outline, and then he would kind of take the story and make it a story, right? And when I was talking to Dak, his last name's eluding me right now, but
well, he goes by Dax Nomad, or Dak Nomad.
Yeah, that's it, Dak Nomad. Yes.
Yeah, I don't know that's his actual real name, but
no, I know, but he spells Nomad with a
guy,
K. So
yeah,
so basically, I asked him how the attendance was last show,
Joe.
And you mentioned that it was 200 people at one point. Well, they're over 4 now, right?
Yeah.
And
200 people was including vendors, right? Like, it was tiny, and now it's not. And it was, when it was tiny, people would skip larger shows to be at this one.
Yep.
And as he grows it, I cannot emphatically advocate for the show enough.
Mm-hmm.
And as I look through here, like I look at your picture,
Yeah,
you know,
which I stole directly off of their site. Yeah,
right. But I see Kickley is in this photo, and just cut out is Mark Gerwig of Mark II Designs, and on the other side of that wall is Skeletron and What's on Joe Mind. Word Burglar is just on the other side of that wall in this photo,
right? Because there's 2 adjoining, like, conference room type things.
And it's more than that this year.
Oh,
From the conversations Brian and I have had, and I've been bugging him about like when can we do an Order of Battle thing. Not that I want Order of Battle to just be supporting you spending your money, but I do want it to be me supporting my friends. And and again, like I'm such an advocate of this show. I've helped with panels. I've helped build their custom toys that you can purchase. I've helped load tables. I'll put the sweat into this show, and it's a 10-hour drive for me.
are they adding a third room that you know of?
That is what he mentioned. Now, and I don't
Wow.
want to speak out of turn. I don't want to speak out of turn because he hasn't come on Order or come on Toy Connections and made any sort of like true announcements. But in our private conversations, he was talking about how much it's grown from last year
Yeah.
to this. And so I cannot wait to see what it looks like. And I can't wait to see next year and the year after. And Brian just, Brian's one of those guys that he is a designer. And so the what he does for his show is what you see at shows with 20 or plus thousand people.
That's amazing because the thing is, right? Carson went for the first time last year. Carson from 3D Joe's, and he basically
He's
said
missed a few times because of things, and then he
yeah,
finally made it, and I don't think he'll miss again, right?
he basically said he's never had so much fun at a show. And each year now, as I'm leaving Joe Fest, the first question I get is, "Are you coming to AR?" Last year, you asked me that. This year, Ryan Meltzer, who was helping with Roma this year, asked me that. And
Ryan and Molly are amazing, and they are great fun to hang out with as well.
so that's just it, right? So like, and on the Sunday night, Brian Sauer actually took of Joe Fest last month. Brian Sauer took the time to introduce himself to me. Now I may have taken some shots from Kenny from Toy Department and a few drinks otherwise, and I may have not been my best, and I may have been seeing double and missing every other word people were saying. So when I'm walking, I suddenly hear, Ken, hi, I'm Brian Sauer from Assembly Required. And I'm sitting there going, I've been trying to meet you for 2 years, and now that I'm in the worst shape I've been at a Joe show. I mean, I wasn't hungover the next day, but let's just say I was pretty dizzy the next day and had to sleep a little earlier that night. Um, Now I'm like unable to like function properly. So I got a photo with him and I'm trying to look normal. But when a guy is not functioning fully and he's trying to grin to look normal, you're like this, it's like he's trying to smile to look normal, but he's not. And I'm like, man, I wonder what kind of impression I left because he's sitting there, he's thinking in his head, maybe we could get 5x5 Toys Delta 17 over there. And I'm going, don't take this meeting as the one that should stick in your mind.
Well,
But Brian's a pretty chill guy from what I recall. So
well, and also to be fair, like he's friends with me and Raging Spoon and Kenny and Ben Conway. Like he's seen all of us housed at least once or seven times.
yeah,
you know,
no, I know. And what I'd love to do because you've seen how I like to do like a narration mixed in with on the floor convention experience type of video, and I feel like I'd love to do something like that for AR. And the funny thing about it is AR's like for Steve where he lives in Manitoba, it's like half or one third of the drive compared to where most shows would be. But he has to find a way to make arrangements because like he crosses the border, they ask a billion questions. Where are you gonna be? What kind of business are you doing? If he just loads up his van with a bunch of stuff and like what are you gonna do with all this stuff? Well, I'm gonna sell it. Okay, we need to see your paperwork, we need to see a manifest, we need your passport, we need your mother's maiden name, we need to know how much you're gonna make so we can tax you when you get back. And it just becomes a case of and that's why he's unable to do it for shows that are not Joe Fest size.
right.
Right? So do I have to try to make arrangements for someone who already has stuff in the US, not naming any names, Joe Recondo, to ship him stuff to Iowa and then maybe make it work that way. I'm not sure, right? So that's something that we'll have to talk about as the years go by because I don't think it's going to happen this year.
It's that's the funny thing is even if it's not say the moneymaker that a Joe Fest would be, Joe Fest is a Joe show of an unusual size, right? Joefest is larger than the JoeCons were, and so or CoilCon or etc. So it's an unfair thing to say, oh, it's not the moneymaker that Fest would be, when you know again, whether it was savvy, luck, or a little of both, you know, Ed and Fest have become its own thing that we didn't have before Fest.
Oh, I'm so proud of everything that Ed has built. Like, you know, he started as the GI Joe Rec Room guy, from my
Yeah.
understanding, and then all of a sudden he's got the show that everybody turns into a destination. Like when we have, sorry, when we have product for Delta 17, we plan the drop for like Joe Fest will be the debut. Right? Like we did that with last year's exclusive after the Wave 1 had landed. And incidentally, Wave 1 had only been on the market for 2 months. So a lot of
Yeah.
people picked it up for the first time at Joe Fest. And then
Same.
this year, you know, we planned our Joe Fest exclusive, the Desert 2 pack. And it just so happened that the Hailstorms that weren't supposed to be an exclusive ended up being on the same production schedule and the weapons pack. And so now we're looking at next year and saying, can we chase at least the first half of the next wave for next year and still have an exclusive? Like we plan our calendars around that. And the thing is, I just love how all you guys, from Adam Skelmosky to Kenny from Toy Department, the whole Toy Department crew, Skeletron, Longbow, all those guys, kind of have this circuit now where you go Joe Fest is your big party, and then like Assembly Required, it's like your year end gathering kind of thing,
Yeah. And we have
right?
several in between, right? So I'm going to see Brian Kaufman and maybe Chris uh, in 2 weekends at Kentucky Anna, which is their
Yes,
July show. I'm going to see them
yes,
again in January at the Winterfest. I'm going to
yes.
see them twice in Atlanta or just north of Atlanta, um, twice a year. And then there's other shows. There's Xenias and there's all these. We live in a very fortunate band of the country when it comes to toy shows at all, specifically Joe shows. And it's a privilege. It's certainly something that not everybody has access to. We recognize, we definitely take advantage. Um, but that's the fun part of our community, is that the JoeCon old heads that I was being introduced to and recommended
Yeah.
to, they were being recommended and
Just
introduced to
keep
me.
going with your story.
Yes,
Apparently, the auto shop's trying to call me and let me know if my car's ready or not. So
no
keep going with your
worries.
story. Keep going with your story.
So
Yeah.
as all of those guys were already, and gals were already well vested in the JoeCon and the CoilCon, um, circuit, and the extra hangouts, the lobby cons, or in the comic book shows, we used to call them bar cons. I don't call them bar cons anymore because everybody just goes, "What the hell is that?" But in the lobby hangs, the lobby cons, moving into AR and Joe Fest, Kentuckianas, the DFWs, we're just continuing to reinforce that community. So I am always an advocate for shows. Now, with Ken not being here, and I guess it's my show now, um, SoCal Joe Show is twice a year. I haven't been to that one yet. Their May show is always at the end of the school year for us. I currently reside in the South. We get out of school at the end of May. Hey, Ken's back. I have to relinquish the show again. But their winter show is in December. So, you know, um, SoCal Joe Show in December sounds like an amazing time to me, when the rest of us are freezing our asses off and Temecula, California is still nice and sunny. Um,
Yeah.
and there's I think somebody mentioned ZoloCon, which is not a Joe specific show, but it is a toy show.
Yep.
A couple years ago, PowerCon was an Anaheim based Motu show. They moved out to Ohio, and half the floor was indie toy companies. And like, we
Yeah.
think about indie toy companies as in like the 5 or 6 that are doing like O-ring and 4-inch and 6-inch that are
Oh.
Joe styled. But there was over, I think their pamphlet, there was over 76 indie toy companies.
So you did
From,
go to PowerCon 2 years ago?
I did, Brian and Mark from Skeletron were bugging me about, you have to come. And I was like, I can't. Okay, I'll come. So I got up at 4 a.m. and I drove up, and we had a good time. We hung out. I was going to sleep on their bed. I was going to sleep on their hotel room floor, and Corey Cantaloupe kindly gave me his extra bed.
Wow.
Ray, the fact that you were here at all at now 2 a.m. for you.
Yep. And
You
Stephen just peaced out
amazing
about 20
artist.
minutes ago. Yeah.
Yeah. I bunked with Corey, and that was Merry Mercenary's 40th, I think. And so Kenny and Aaron and Ryan and Molly and Merry Mercenary and myself and Ben and everybody that was there, all of us that were there, ended up getting housed. And the next day, Ben is celebrating how poorly I was the next day.
Well, mission accomplished, right? So that's
Right.
awesome. Yeah.
And again, not that drinking is necessary for those of our community that are sober. And as we get older, more and more of us convert to sober for either health reasons or addiction reasons or whatever your case is. For those of us that are sober, show up. We'll clink water cups. It doesn't have to be booze.
There's actually no pressure at all. Yeah.
There's zero. Well, there is pressure from the 99 bag, but if you say I'm sober, they leave you alone.
They do. Yeah. Which
but
I didn't
if
try.
They know you're a drinker. Yeah. Well, if you got a beer in hand, they're not going to believe you. But if you are a drinker, yes, there's pressure. But seriously, for those that are sober, and I stress that because I know a lot of people that don't show up at these shows because they're sober and they don't want to be either tempted or bothered or whatever the case may be. So I come from nightclubs. I've seen so many people go sober and it's such the smart thing to do. If I was intelligent, I would go sober.
I wish I could say the same now. I haven't drank since Joefest, but yeah. And to answer Bart's question here, no, I don't have a Lamborghini, but this always happens when I'm on a live show. Either one, my bladder says, empty me now, for whatever reason, it knows I'm live, or something happens like the doorbell rings and there's a UPS shipment out there, right, that can't sit for too long, or my car has an issue, i.e. got hit while I was parked. I was not in the car last Saturday, and it's in the shop. The other party took liability. It's fine. And now the car place, which had all day to call me, calls me now to say we have a RAV4 for you to drive as a courtesy car while we repair your car tomorrow. Incidentally, apparently it was a RAV4 that hit me as well. So hopefully it's not the same RAV4. Yeah.
So AR is AR is amazing. The 99 bag is full pressure. AR is amazing. CoilCon was amazing before it shuttered. That's a show in the past.
Yes.
And that's the sad truth about shows, right? Joefest could end tomorrow. So could AR.
I hope not. I hope not. But
no. Yeah. I'm not saying they are. I'm saying all of these shows could end, right? Like they all had reasons for going. They all have stress and pressure and complications at running. Putting on a show is not an easy venture. And so when they do end, like we can celebrate the ones that are, we could pour a little out for those that are gone before us. But that also ties into why Joefest has been so successful, why Kentuckiana has been growing. When I first started going to Kentuckiana, it was in one room of a hotel about the size of this picture. And now it's in a space that's about a third the size of Joefest, the Commerce floor. And it's growing. DFW has been going on for 20 years, kind of quietly by itself. And now suddenly it's growing.
It was a 12-inch show that started to migrate into more of an overall Joe show. And,
same as Kentuckiana. Yeah.
Yep.
Which is awesome. Like these, I hear from like the Skamoskis and all the older guys that at one point in time, there was animosity and real like friction between the O-ring guys and the 12-inch guys, and and that seems to be gone.
It
And
does.
I
It's,
don't
I
know that
mean,
a lot of us are going back and exploring the 12-inch line. For years, I used to call it like the Germanics and the Greeks to my English. Like, I know this is
yeah,
where my language comes from, but it's not my language.
right.
And, you know, it took one Kentuckiana, and suddenly I have Daryl DePriest's book. I'm looking at,
That's a great book.
yeah, I'm looking at, I can't remember, is it 12-inch 3D Joes or
Vintage3djoes.com that
the
Ace
vintage
Allgood
3D?
runs. Yeah.
You know, and I'm talking to Ace Allgood, which is kind of like the Chris Neal 12-inch.
Yep.
I'm hanging out with all of the 12-inch guys, and I'm exploring the line, and I have tons of figures, and I'm loving it. And yeah, the wherever it is, the the Bullet Man was one of those things that feels like, as a lot of Adventure Team does, it feels like the bridge between the military Joes and our O-ring Joes. And so it's just kind of an easy jump once you start getting into Bulletmans and Mike Powers, and then the rest of the Adventure Team,
Yep.
the Talking Commanders, to then go all the way back to 64. And
Yep.
then one of these old guys goes, "Hey, have you ever heard of Major Matt Mason?" And now you're in the 50s.
Yes. Yes. Oh, did Matt Mason start in the 50s? I thought it was a 60s line in parallel with Joe. Holy crap.
It started. Major Matt Mason came out before the moon landing.
Huh. Huh. That's crazy. Okay.
Major
Wow.
Matt Mason and his friends who work on the moon, and their 12-inch, not articulated alien friend,
Mm-hmm.
plus all the green and the purple alien guys.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a fun line. Unfortunately, those wires break and then they become
Yes.
useless,
Yes,
or
I've heard
the
that
paint
before.
rubs off. But it's a fun line, and if you can get your hands on a couple, don't leave them in a sitting position.
Fair enough. One of the tips of the toys from that era.
Yeah,
One thing I wanted to touch on is you mentioned Alexander a little bit, and I think you
sure.
managed to take a few toys from his room to make your awesome background back there. Um, so what was it like getting him into Joe's and toys? Like you mentioned, he migrated from Transformers. When I saw him on the floor playing with Delta 17, I'm just like, yes, the next generation. Thank you, my friend. So what was it like
I
kind of getting him involved?
uh, lucky, right? I've talked to a lot of our contemporaries that their kids don't care. Um, I was at Heroes Con one year, and I'm walking the floor. I've bought the comics I want. It's Sunday. It's really at the end of the day. We've sold incredible. We were stationed right next to the women's restroom, so we were like hands over fist all weekend. You know, larger than professional numbers, which is not a thing that indies can say. And I happened to cross Optimus and Soundwave, stupid cheap, complete, bottom. You know, we made good money, so I treated myself. And I never had Optimus as a kid, and my Soundwave is who knows where into the mists of time. So I brought him home. He saw him. He freaked out. He was 3.5. So we sat down on the floor and we played. And I'm just I don't know what you want. Irresponsible. I don't know. I'm just enough that we started by teaching him how to crash without throwing. And the more he played, the further I got away from him. And within like a few days, I was in a whole other room. The 3.5-year-old's playing with a vintage, a G1 Optimus Prime and a G1 Soundwave.
But if you're going to give him a toy, Soundwave is articulated like crazy, so you might as well.
Yeah.
And Optimus
Well,
Prime is just recognizable to
sure,
anyone.
but that chest cavity breaks easy, right? And
Yes, it does.
him taking Ravage in and out
Yes.
could have been a really bad, you know. So I got lucky that he was interested. I got lucky that I gave him access, and then I got lucky that he responded well to vigorous but gentle play.
Mm.
He started helping me change O-rings on a handful of figures that I
Wow.
thought were childhood friends. And I found out later from a buddy, he was like, no, you got those for me in 2000. I was like, well, shit, I forgot.
That's funny.
And so I was already taking him to comic shows and comic book shops, and taking him to game shops, and we found rescue bots, and then we found animated, and then when he was 5, he was like, I hate Transformers, only GI Joe. I was like, okay. So I
Okay.
took him to JoeCon. His mother loved Chattanooga, so the three of us came down. During the day, he was with me on the floor. She had him at night, so I could go get housed with, Skamoski, Dan Moore, and Dan Music, and everybody else, Kurt Groen, in the lobby.
Kurt Groen as well. Wow.
So, so he's just always been here.
Wow. Because it was cool meeting him again. Or
Yeah.
did I meet him last year? I definitely talked to him more this year.
Yeah, well,
Right.
last year you guys met him last year because I had seen Steve's tiny little half booth set up in the back of the room.
Oh, 2 years ago? Yeah.
Yeah, for a couple years, and these look cool. I can't wait for these to come out. I should meet the guy who's doing this, but he's bathroom breaking or whatever. So I'm just looking at the shit with nobody there. Or I'm leaving our booth after the show's closed and he's already,
Packed up and
left
gone. Yeah.
because he doesn't have to, do much more than just half booth. And
Yeah.
last year you guys had product, and A comes over saying, hey, we got to buy these. And I was like, well, yeah, when they come out,
Who did? Who
we'll
said?
Alexander.
A. Okay. So I was
He's
just
like, we
Eddie
gotta,
for a second. I'm like,
yeah,
no.
we
A.
got to buy these. And I'm like, well, yeah, when they start their Kickstarter, we'll look at it. He was like, no, they're here selling. And I'm like, all right, well, fuck, lead the way. And then the next thing I know, he's like buying a handful from Wilhelm. And, I haven't met you and I haven't met Steve yet, but we've met your people. And I don't meet you guys until we're in the lobby, half cocked, and Alexander's sitting in the downstairs lobby with your guys' figures, ripping
Yes.
them off
Okay.
the card and playing with them in that like front door part of the lobby. And
Yep.
Steve's over there with him. And I think the main bad guy with the horns,
Shadow Dragon.
like the horns snapped on his, and Steve was like, don't worry, I got you. And
Oh,
he was
that's who he replaced, because he said he replaced a kid's Shadow Dragon last year.
That's right.
It was
And so
Alexander. Huh.
it was. And so I was like, listen, if this was Ben Conway or Mark O'Brien, if this was John Kukovich or Troy, if this was Raging Spoon, you would, you'd be thankful, you'd help them out, you'd do all these things. Steve's not our friend. We don't know Steve. So don't forget to treat him the same way you would treat a friend who just helped you out.
Wow.
And so the next day he's back in Steve's ear, like, da, 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 da. So, so this year, we knew you guys had the 2-pack and you had the hailstorms. And so he was excited about those. But I don't have a job right now. I've been laid off for a few months. I sold personal collection to pay for my Joefest hotel and my food. So we showed up. I spent $0, right? The Robo Skull I brought home was prepaid for.
Right.
But he had money in his pocket. He had been watching neighbors' cats and doing shit around the house and just trying to earn money.
Wow.
So he bought the Cosmic Cruiser himself from Stephen Brown, and then he went to your guys' booth.
Wow. That's I didn't know the full extent of that story. I knew he bought stuff from us. I didn't know that was that story Steve told me about replacing someone's broken head on the Shadow Dragon. I did not realize that was until now.
Yeah.
That's amazing.
And so right now, ever since Joefest, your whole first wave, plus the exclusives, have been on the floor with Zyka Toys' Riot Commandos,
That's
with
cool.
Skeletron's Wolf
Yeah.
Troopers, with Grindstone's Ghost, with Jason Chisholm's Slaughter's Marauders Customs,
Yeah.
which we have several, and the HasLab Ghost, the vintage Robo Skull, both of the new Robo Skulls, um, the GI Joe Hammer. Like, it's just, these
It's all
things
just
are
mixed in.
on the floor running. Yeah, but they're mixed in. Your stuff is mixed in with your contemporaries things
I
and
love it.
the
I love it.
vintage things that we all are inspired by.
It's all there in
So,
one playroom. I love when you take photos of him doing that. He's laying on the floor. He's like moving them around. Yeah.
yeah,
I'm gonna say
he's still
quick.
telling adventures.
I love it. Playing the old school way.
Black Genghis had, I haven't looked in a while, but his Instagram classified checklist was what I used for the first couple years. I couldn't
We
keep
were
up
we
with
were just
classified
talking about
without.
his updated one yesterday. So he's like, hey, do you think this layout or this layout? I'm like, I'll give you some feedback right now. So
If
hopefully he
he
was with
is
my advice.
if he has been to Joe Fest, he has not identified himself as Black Genghis.
He's like, he has not gone to Joe Fest yet, but I've seen in photos he's like 6'6", so you won't miss him.
Fair.
There's
Okay.
two guys in our community who are 6'6", Black Genghis and Bart Simon. So
We all
and
know who Bart
they're
Simon is, but
yes,
uh,
and they're
so
they're two messages away from each other. So he goes to SDCC. So thank you. He says here because I got to read it out. High five, high 10. Just a quick shout out to Ken and Jason. Have a great one. And
well,
no, thank you, Mister 66 and Mister 66.
if Genghis ever makes it to SoCal Joe Show, and I do too, it'd be nice to shake hands.
Yep,
Um,
I'll be
I've had
shaking
the
hands like this.
opportunity.
So
Yes, definitely. I've had opportunities to go to San Diego Comic Con, and I wanted to as a child, but it's such a thing at this point that I haven't put the funds into it in the couple opportunities that I've had. I hear it's a lot, but then again, I'm going to be doing Gen Con in a couple weeks. So what's a lot?
but at least
100,000
it's
people is
fun.
fine.
Just another day in the life of yeah. Anyway, so I know we've been going for a little over an hour here, but I did want to touch on Order of Battle
Sure.
podcast and how you got started there and how that's kind of your gig. And I did put the Apple podcast link in the video description here. I'm not sure if that's the best one. I don't know if it's as simple as putting a YouTube channel link like I do. But
Yeah.
that's the one that's in the description if everyone wants to go check out Order of Battle, because I was listening to your episode with Brian Sauer from last year and your episode with Brian Hickey about the release of um, the old books there by IPC magazines, the reprints. So maybe tell us a little bit about Order of Battle and
Sure.
yeah,
Um, Order Battle is interesting. I am a collector by nature. So, at one point it was Magic the Gathering cards, and I got rid of all those, and I'm card free since '96. It's been comic books, it's been DVDs and video games and toys, and I like collecting things. I have thousands of books. I'm a book guy. Um, but collecting is just commerce, it's just purchasing. And if that's the only reason why I'm doing something, I struggle with that. So I have to be a little active. Whether it was running a comic book shop or running a game room, um, or whatever the case may be, I need to be involved in doing something. Um, Partnering with Deshros Toyden is a great way for me to do something. Um, I was showing up on friends' YouTubes like this or podcasts, and I got invited to a podcast, and it it didn't last, right? Like so many other podcasts, it just, the scheduling and yada yada yadas, it just didn't last. And Joel and I, who had met through that, um, we had been chatting, and I said, "Well, I kind of I kind of liked doing that. Let's see if we can do that again. And I spent a few months trying to figure out audio, and it was awful. And I went to a buddy of mine who's a heavy metal and punk, and he's in like several bands, and he does audio. And he came to the house, and I said, "Why does my audio sound like shit?" He moved 2 chords. I paid him $50. It sounded good, and we started.
Wow.
And so I would like to do it more than we do, but I over edit. I am self-defeatingly meticulous about my edits.
You're preaching to the choir, just saying.
Yeah, well, I just said and you don't hear a lot of those when I podcast, because I get rid of that. I want to start recording the minute we start talking, cut out all the beginning stuff, make sure someone's comfortable, edit it down to what is relevant, what is useful. I don't really like the fluff of a lot of podcasts and YouTubes where people are just talking about nothing just to build the time. So, and I say that as Stephen Kelly and I just went for 2 hours and 47 minutes on yesterday's episode, but that was a 4-hour episode that I edited down to 247. So, so right now I was putting them out on a schedule every 2 weeks. A committed and consistent schedule is the key. But this year has been tough. There has been 8 or 9 or 10 things that have happened this year, and I just haven't put out a lot of episodes this year. That said, my broken hand is no longer in a cast. The job hunt still continues, but I want to get back into that schedule. I want to do more. And sitting down with Steven, talking to Simon about doing something, talking to Brian Sauer, and talking to Roger Taft, talking to, Ben Conway and yourself about putting together some episodes, getting back on that consistent schedule. And if I could get out of my own way, being more consistent would be lovely. And so Order of Battle started just as a scrappy, Joel and I, him being a 4-inch guy, me being an O-ring guy. We're 15 years apart, just talking about our various sides of G.I. Joe. For the first 2 years for year 2 and year 3 of Joefest, we were the only person putting that on. He hadn't been on any YouTubes. He hadn't been on any podcasts, just us. And it was simply because we were too dumb to know that we shouldn't invite someone on for an interview. And I was friends with Ed, so why not?
And then it all just snowballs kind of from there. But yeah, I know you said you've been trying to get more consistent again. I mean, it's easy listening, right? I mean, the episodes, so sometimes a super duper long live stream can be like, okay, how much did they really talk about something good, and how much did they just sit there and shoot the breeze with inside jokes that are going to go over my head? Now, if you get all the inside jokes, it's great. If you don't, it's hard, right? Well, check out Order of Battle on there. Maybe I'll try to get the Spotify list on there.
It is
as well.
So we host on Audio Boom,
Travis.
but if you have any sort of podcatcher, it's going to catch it, right? I use
Perfect.
Pocket Cast personally. If you use Apple or Spotify or whatever.
I use Spotify, yeah.
Audio Boom pushes it out to everybody. I met Travis last year. I did not see him this year, but
he was not there this year. Yeah.
And Travis is another one of those guys that we talked about, like, I need to just have you on the podcast because I just met you and we're already friends and this will be fun. And then I'm bad about reaching out sometimes, and that's definitely a weakness that I got to get better at as well.
Yeah, Rachel Salinas is in the chat as well. Finally put a face to the voice. Enjoys when A makes an appearance, and it's nice to hear kids get excited about G.I. Joe.
A is no longer interested in making appearances on the podcast at the moment. That may change. He's a teenager now. but he is always welcome every single time. And in fact, lately, Joel hasn't made making appearances either because his job and his band has been so very oppressive, um, which is good because that means he makes the money that it takes to continue being a part of our expensive ass hobby. Uh,
Oh yeah.
but we'll
Dem20,
get him there.
thank you for the $2 super chat. We got a request here.
I
When are you
will
going
go
to a
to.
con in Puerto Rico?
I mean, I need a job first, but once I have a job and I've paid off the medical bills from this hand, I'm down. If you're my guide, I'm in. Um, so I don't. Did you meet David and Maria at Joe Fest this year, Ken?
It's not ringing a bell, but
You
if
you did. He had the rum.
oh, rum guy. Okay, okay.
David E. and Maria.
Oh, wait a minute, David E.
Yeah.
Yes, yes. Actually, I bought Dave. Is this his other? Usually, he has a different handle.
I mean, I
I've
assume
met.
it's him because it's his OR character, and he's talking about Puerto Rico. So
Oh, that's the wrestler. Not only did
yeah,
I meet him,
full
I met him
eagle.
three. Not only did I meet him 3 times, I bought his Battle Core Duke carded for $25.
Yes,
At
that was
the
on your video.
yes, yes, and he not only gives me rum every single year. At the first Joe Fest that I went to in 23, it's 11 p.m. So the lobby is just buzzing,
Raging.
right?
Two
And
floors.
so, of course, I come in the door. He's the first one to see me. So he makes me feel important. He goes, Ken! So, of course, people who knew I was coming, they all kind of turned, oh, hey, Ken's here, right? And, of course, but they would do this for anybody. But because Dave kind of broadcasted it out there, it was just like a lineup of handshakes. And I was like, okay, this is the first Joe Fest. And Steve standing here next to me going, all right, I guess we know we're with our people. So that was kind of nice. So I didn't realize, usually he has commented as Dave E in the past. I didn't realize that he'd switch names, but you're right. That is absolutely Saul Eagle from the Operation Recall line. Yes. And your Battlecore Duke is awesome, by the way. I should have bought your Red Star when I was there, but I couldn't get myself to keep spending. So,
It's
yeah.
yeah, he's amazing. And there's Gary V.
Yep.
And it is nice that that lobby is two floors. Um, I've never seen a lobby hang quite that nice,
Yes.
because it is the two stories. You
Yes.
know, even
There's the mezzanine area that leads to the hallway. Yeah, that's awesome.
yeah, even the enormous one at the Westin for Heroes Con, which spills out both the front and the back door, is still only one floor.
Yeah.
That one
But
being
you
two
said
floors is
the
something
lobby's pretty good
special.
at AR in Iowa. You said.
The lobby hang at Iowa is awesome. It's
Yeah.
super good. Um, but that the Joe Fest one being two floors makes it something a little special.
Yes.
And there's a table that's sort of tucked under the stairs a little bit,
Yes.
that there's a large contingent of guys that are always at that table.
Yep.
Slaughter has sat at that table and drank with
Yep.
everybody. It's right outside the bathrooms that
Yep.
you almost oopsed into, and
Yep.
right outside the bar. And you go up the staircase, and then you have the nice big wide area, two tables on one side, the big seating area on the other, the whole balcony around, and it just fills up.
Yeah.
Um, it's a whole convention worth of people just at the lobby hang. So if you
Yep.
do come to Joe Fest, don't go to bed at 8 p.m.
There's a lot of
Just
people who are light sleepers, and sorry, you can. I'm sure you can hear the airplane coming near my. God damn it! Because I live near the flight path, so I keep having to mute my microphone.
That's all
And
right.
yes,
I,
Joey,
I also live near a flight path, and I have my ceiling fan on, so I get it.
I do troll punk with toys quite a bit when I'm at the show. So
Yeah,
we always do our wrestling banter. So the one of the last things I want to ask you before we
sure.
sign off here is tell us a little bit about your involvement with Destro's Toy Den.
Um, Todd and I live 45 minutes away from each other, and he was part of the local community before I was. He was well known in the local community before I was, and he had a group of friends that would go down to Toylanta and go up to Kentuckiana And as those people sort of vanished and disappeared, he was running shows at his house, or like gatherings at his house. And every time he would say, "Hey, we're having a gathering in my house," I was always out of town. So we had met once, but I was known as Jason Out of Town. And so for a couple of years, like, we knew who each other were, but we didn't hang out. We weren't friends. We knew each other. And then when we did start hanging out, we realized that everyone he was friends with, I didn't know, and vice versa. And we were both going to the same show. So his people were not around. So he said, "Do you want to ride with me?" And boom, we've been riding together ever since.
All right. Yeah, because I noticed you always help out with that booth.
Yeah, I was going to go to the DFW, but I had some support structures that fell through, like taking care of the cats and things like that, and it just became a mess, and I couldn't make DFW, and I'm really sad because I like Greg a lot, and I want Greg to be successful and whoever his partners are,
Yep.
and I want to explore a show I've never been to. So it's good to hear that that it was a good show, and I think Todd sold your stuff really well at that show, didn't he?
We brought him a couple dozen figures, more than that actually. He said he left with 3 figures.
Yeah.
That's it. He sold 90% of the stuff that we sent there. So we'll send him
We
more
had a
stuff.
yeah, we
Yeah.
had a long conversation about whether or not it was valuable to even attempt. And when it broke down to it, you guys were easy enough to do a test and make sure that it was valuable for us, not and you at the same time. And and I'm glad that it proved itself to be valuable, because then it gives Deschus Toyden another thing to bring to shows, and it gives you guys another advocate out in the world when you guys are not at the show. So it's a good
So
partnership.
so what happened was he bought more um, after the show that we shipped out through our fulfillment center,
Yeah.
and then some of the new clientele or some of the new buyers he ran into ended up calling dibs. So then he puts in another order, and it just keeps going. And Destro's Toy then has always been one of those stops that you go into at Joe Fest. My buddy Matt got a Terrordrome there last year,
Yeah.
right? And there's just it's just you go in there like you're in the video trying to sell me a pop loop, right? I'm just like, all right, there's only so much money to go around here. So I wasn't really sure exactly because you're always helping with the show, so or you're always helping with the setup.
So
So
Destros
it's
Toyden
good to
is Destros Toyden is, we've always talked about it as just being us. It is
keep going,
90,
keep going.
it's 90+%, around 95, 98, 99% Todd and me. And then so it's Todd's thing, but it it is how he continued to be active in the community as a collector once he quote unquote finished the collection he was working on. And the fact that we partner well, we have the same aesthetic when it comes to building a booth. I had a lot of previous experience from comics, and he has a lot of previous experience from sports and schools and things like that. It worked well together, and we travel well together, and it's just a good partnership. So um, it's gonna be fun. Not this weekend, but the very next weekend, the 18th and 19th at Kentuckiana. So Kentuckiana, the July show, Destros Toyden has 2 booths, and then all of the dig bins, just like at Joefest. And so it's if you can make Louisville, Kentucky, or just south of it, Shepherdsville, um, there's a great antique toy mall. There's a few other good toy and comic shops in town, and then Kentuckiana, ran by Steve Stovall and Larry. Don't remember his last name. Um, they are 12-inch guys that had some friends who were both 12-inch and 3 3/4, and over the years, 3 3/4 taken over half the room. So now, if you liked Joe Fest's commerce side, not even talking about the lobby part, just the commerce. Um, the floor size is about a third of Joefest.
Hmm.
And it's great. It's fun. I think Ron Rudat will be there this year, I think. He was just at DFW. I think he's going to be at AR. He's got a lot of shows this year.
Yeah.
Last year we had Tim, Captain Power. We had Captain Power with us at Joefest.
Done again.
Yes, thank you. Holy crap. I apologize, Tim. He's such a sweet guy. But he was with us at Joefest, and then he and his sister were with us at Kentuckiana last year. So it is a great show. I can't recommend Kentuckiana enough. Right.
Well,
and then later on we'll be at Joelanta, which is just north of Atlanta. Then there's AR, then there's Retro Toy Con, and it just keeps going. Like
shout out to Toy Federation that runs Retro Toy Con there, and Brett who runs Joelana Toylana.
Yep. I've never been to Retro Toy Con. When I'm heading to AR, Todd's heading to
Retro Toy
South Carolina, North Carolina, South Carolina, and he loves it. He thinks it and Joefest are his two favorite shows of the year.
Yep, and around that same time is Legion's Con as well in November.
Legion's Con is up north, and I'm not a Four Horsemen collector, but I hear that show is flat amazing.
Yeah, and they're expanding the indie side. Well, they are indie to begin with, right? And I heard they pretty much ruled the place at PowerCon a couple of years ago.
They had one hell of a line at PowerCon. Like it was half, like the line extended down about half the floor and then doubled back on itself a couple times.
Yeah.
But by Sunday afternoon, I could walk up and buy whatever I wanted. But if you wanted the exclusives, those were gone. Yeah, that was huge at PowerCon a couple years ago. And I know the first time they were at Toylana in the old location, Todd and I were sitting there staring at Brian Kaufman, who was across from us. And the show floor's open like 10 minutes and we haven't seen a single person. And we were like, oh no. Is this show dying? Is this going to be the death knell of Toylana? And then we look over and every attendee is in the Four Horsemen line. It was the first time they'd been to Toylana.
Huh.
And they had to get through that line with their whole cardboard box of stuff before they made it to the floor. And we started to get people, and it picked up after Four Horsemen had already had their say with the wallets. So
that sounds about right, because they've kind of earned that spot in the indie toy game. So I'm not super surprised when I see Jeremy at the shows, who's kind of their marketing guy. I go, I'm supposed to be you for 5x5 toys, so I kind of model my career after what you do, man. So you just lead the way, and we'll do that. And next thing I know, he's buying a Hailstorm. He bought a Shadow Dragon last year. He's just like, he's a great guy. Yeah, I met him in Diego this year. Yeah,
I met him twice this year, and I've never met him before. So we just very briefly chatted. I wouldn't say I know him. I've just met him twice. But that's one of the things that I really like about a lot of these shows now is that Kentucky Fried Toys and Skeletron and you guys and all the different indies are showing up and making an appearance. And even when there's nothing to sell and you're promoting what's coming next, or like you said, when you have your release schedule and you're showing up with a new exclusive, it's joyful to see friends who are moving from buying to making,
Delta17toys.com. You can get that right there.
I mean, at Joefest this year, during the Grindhouse panel, Chris's Kickstarter funded.
Oh my, that can't, wow. Like, you can't plan that. Like, that's so priceless.
Yeah, and so in the middle of his World War Hell panel, someone goes, Chris, how does it feel to have funded just now?
And he's like, amazing. What? I was here at a panel. I had no idea.
And he's just like, nah, I mean, Chris is a Minch. He's just like, he sells it. Like, of course this is when we're gonna fund. Like,
But really,
but
inside, he's like jumping like a little kid.
oh yeah,
So
but
yeah.
but Chris has put in the sweat equity, right? Like, who's working harder than Chris right now?
Right
You
now,
know,
not many. No one.
right?
Right.
He started as
Especially right now.
a
Yeah.
paint master, and then doing a couple exclusives, and then building his own line. And the next thing you know, he is officially joining your guys' arena with a funded Kickstarter and talking to China and in the mix. He's not just talking the game, he's in the
Yep.
game.
He's not just a flash in the pan. It's gonna
That's
happen.
right.
So yeah.
And so I can't wait to see every success from him the same way as I'm seeing it from you or from Ben or from Troy. And it's really
Carson, yeah.
lovely.
Everyone. Heavy armor.
Carson. I mean, I'm intimately familiar with Operation Recall. So to see what Carson has been doing over the last 3 years, and to see the joy on like Doug Hart or Ron or Mark or any of these guys when you mention their new stuff, not just mention how much you like their old shit, is really something special.
Yeah. Oh my God. The last half of this year and into next year is going to be nuts as far as getting new products. So, yeah. Well, we've
It's all
hit
gonna be
about
on the
the
floor.
we've we've hit about the 90-minute mark here. Is there anything
Sure.
else you want to hit up a shameless plug for, or anything else you want to share?
I think I've
Right.
shamelessly plugged most of our friends, and you plugged my podcast. Thank you. And
Mm-hmm.
I've plugged Todd's thing. So, this is in service to you, man. Like, I showed up because I'm a fan of you as a person. We're friends. And like we were talking the other day, is like, I don't have to like your toys because I like you. There's no contract that says D17 is good because Ken is cool. I like D17 because I've opened it. I've put it on the floor. I've put it with Joe's and with other things. It's been in the hammer. It's been in a pogo. I like D17 because it's dope as fuck. And then also we're friends. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we've become
So,
friends the last little while, and it's been awesome.
right.
And one of the things we talked about was that, you know, we tend to we're used to the circles that we're in, right? Like I know you said you don't go all the way back to the early JoeCons or anything like that, but you've kind of gotten accustomed with that crowd, right?
Yes.
And then while we all get together at Joefest, after Joefest, everyone kind of goes back into their pockets, right? It's not cliquish, right? But you're just used to your circle, right? I'm used to mine. And this was kind of an opportunity to kind of like have the best of both worlds. Here's a guy who knows all the old school Joe people, all the names that you've dropped here. You know, I don't know if you ever got to meet Gary Goggle's or not. You might have just missed
He
him
he died right before I joined the community.
in 2015.
But
Yeah.
yeah, and I joined in 2016. So, but all of his friends are now people that I cherish dearly.
Yeah, right.
So I'm sure had I been around when he was around,
You would have gotten along
and
just fine, right?
he
Just
was a
like
club kid too, so
you
we
know,
probably would have had a lot in common.
and I just overlapped with Aaron Dietrich in the last couple of years there. He was that was the Glenda that I was holding that I almost bought a couple of years back that I passed on, and someone came and bought it right after. I was like, oh nuts! But that's a story in of
So
itself.
I met Aaron at Planet Comic Con in Kansas City. I met his wife at the same show, and I was still in the comic book world at the time, but I was buying toys on my own, and they were lovely. Like I met Mary Mercenary, with the Tiger Hawks finest crew, who are lovely, lovely people. And what a great cosplay community that the Tiger Hawks have built. I don't know all the other garrisons, but that garrison I can vouch for all day long. Um, and so, oh, you should meet my husband. And she walks me to his booth, and I spent some good money with Aaron. We had some good conversation before going back to my own booth, selling a comic. And then I joined the Joe community, and I just saw him constantly 3, 4, 5, 6 times a year. And we always got along. He treated my son so well. And, Alexander was enamored with him. At
We
the same
lost.
time,
Yeah.
yeah, at the same time, like, there were so many people that knew him better, knew him longer, knew him deeper. I am not even one of his closest friends. So, for as much as I had from that relationship, the people that knew him better and longer and stronger than I ever did, I can only feel for them, because I know how much it hurt us. You know what I mean? And I, will forever be thankful to Kenny for reaching out and telling us when it happened, and being able to come up for his celebration in January. But, again, for as much as I saw him and knew him, I didn't know him a fraction of some of the people in our community.
And you got to see him renew his vows. You got to
Yes,
see him and his wife renew their vows in November there. Yeah, we
which was
lost a good
great.
one, and I only had brief conversations with him between Joefest 23 and 24, but
Mhm.
he remembered me the next year,
He's
right? He
very
was a
good
good
at
guy.
that. Yeah,
Yeah,
he remembered me from a nothing show where I was a comic book seller. I'm selling an indie book, stopping by his booth.
yeah,
And he
and now
remembered me.
he's going to be immortalized as the Yeti character in Skeletron, which
Such a
what
good looking figure.
it's a great looking figure for a great guy,
Yeah.
and it's just fitting he's going into Skeletron, and we lost a good one. We lost a good one
Yeah.
earlier this year.
My heart goes out to everybody that was close to him, that
Yep,
knew him.
cousin Kenny and everyone.
Yeah, that
Yeah.
knew him for decades longer than you or I. And for as much as we liked him, those people have had to deal with so much more, and his family. But yeah, the Yeti is going to be phenomenal, and it's a good reminder that all of us on our side of the line should not get their feelings hurt when all the guys on your side of the line keep secrets. Because I'm friends with everybody involved in that project, and I didn't know about it, and I'm like, you
I know, I
uh,
know.
you guys are secret keepers. You
But
have to
we
be, right?
but it made the reveal that much. I wasn't in the room when it happened. I got a message from Kenny, and I was like, "Oh man, I went up my room at the wrong time, because that's what happens at Joe Fest." But yeah, well, I mean, let's have you on again at some point,
Sure. And
and
and you as well. Like, if you're okay with just audio only.
in some ways, I kind of prefer it because I can lie down in the bed or something like that and just put
Sure.
a microphone in my face, right? In some ways, it's easier, right? You're editing through, so if I need two washroom breaks, I can, you can cut it out, no problem, right? And then, I mean, like I said earlier, like, like you've kind of, you've got your friends, all the ones you've mentioned, like, and the guys like Talking Joe and all those others, and I'm kind of in my YouTube circle with the pandemic, what I stereotype as the pandemic era channels that came up because we were all at home, we had spare time, like Podcast from the Pits, like Punk with Toys. I mean, he came out a little before, but he was a skateboarding channel, right? And then
Kind of cool.
like the two worlds don't necessarily meet, right? Like we have our online YouTube world, and some of you guys have your sort of like audio world. I know Talking Joe does do YouTube as well, and I just watched Tim Finn's karaoke rendition of the Mask theme song, which was amazing, right? But I also know that like that old, that old school original Joe Guard, they have their circle, but it would
Yeah.
be nice to get some of that knowledge on here, not just yourself, but also some of the members
Yeah.
of Declassified who have prototypes. You know what I mean? And
Yeah.
you've talked about Brian Kaufman from Toy Department being a expert guru of information. You got some of the guys like Carson that cross over into both worlds, but he's also the 3djoes.com guy. I don't want to say expected, but it's just a natural flow for him to do that. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
And when you talk about all of those guys, any of the D class guys are just, they're such amazing people to sit down and talk to, because as much as you think you know,
Yeah.
I in every circle I'm in, somebody goes, "Oh, you're an expert." I'm like, "I'm not an expert. I know Pat
Uh,
Stewart. I know Kaufman. I know Chris Murray. I know Paige. I know," like, I can go down the list of
yep.
all the
I was
reasons
talking to
why.
Pat Stewart last night. Really cool, knowledgeable, guy, and I'm just like, oh, prototypes, him and Chris Murray, just prototypes galore. Drew, prototypes galore, right? Darren previously, but I think he sold some of his prototypes, and he
I
stepped
mean,
away
some of
from.
that stuff has changed hand a few times. At Joe Fest, I got to see a few two ups that I had never seen before, like Raptors Falcon.
Yeah,
Um,
right.
and there's always something interesting to see when you go into the D class booth. And I know it irritates people, but they ask people not to take photos of their booth. And that is because they don't own everything in the booth, and some people are more private than others. So always go into put your phone away, go into the class booth, and just enjoy the experience. Talk to the guys that are running the booth. It doesn't matter
Yep.
which one; they are all like wildly,
Yep. When I was there, it was Carl that was watching the booth. I didn't even know if he was
yeah,
part of D class or not.
yeah.
But
Carl's great. Like he knows so much.
yep,
He's just quiet when you consider like Chris Murray.
he was quiet, and then once I got him talking, he was talking
Yep.
as well. But I was around the time I took the shot I shouldn't have taken, and I was starting to, yeah, zonk a little bit. But anyway,
Yeah.
all right, we've hit the
Thank you for
hundred
having me
minute.
on.
Yeah, we've hit the 100-minute mark. So this is good. Just two guys talking stuff, talking
Yeah.
conventions, and you get to kind of show us some of the experiences that you've had, and it was good to kind of get into your world that I've not had a chance to explore to this depth before. So thank you for being here, and everybody check out the Order of Battle podcast. I have one of the links in the description below. I don't know if it's the only link, but I did my best. So
Yeah. I mean, we're on all the different pod aggregates, so it doesn't matter where you link us from.
yeah, so type it in. That's how I found it on Spotify. I just typed it in. So all right, I don't have a fancy outro or anything, so we're just gonna do a cold end of the stream right now. So let's wave goodbye to everyone and have a good
Just
one.
hit
Thanks everyone
just
for
hit stop
watching.
in the middle of one of us talking.
Sure, let's do that.
Thank you.